or ex-Muslims, and there's a few here, and like they've been like in the I don't know, they've been in the Muslim family and they've left. So I wonder why is it that they would leave? Like if being a Muslim is such a great thing.
And so what have you found? Those ex-Muslims who leave, why do they leave Islam? And why do they call themselves ex-Muslims? If somebody was a rapist, they're going to go around saying, I'm an ex-rapist. Because if that was so bad, you would not identify with something that is bad. If Islam is so bad, why you day and night identify with Islam, or I'm an ex-Muslim? That's your identity, I'm an ex-Muslim. It tells you millions and volumes about, why this identity is needed. So in your understanding, let's talk about this one first, because that should clarify the matter. Why do people leave Islam? Those people that you've seen, that you've known about, why?
Some of them have said that they don't believe everything that's written like in the Quran. Some of them have said that.
Any specific examples they've shared?
I'm trying to think of the one that's been put forward most.
So keep on thinking, but what I want to at the same time to focus on is this, that if it's demonstrated that what they thought was a reason to leave is actually not a justifiable reason, then we would establish that they were not justified to leave. It was something else. Because the examples will illustrate that, whether the examples indeed was a justifiable reason for them to leave, saying this is not something that I should accept.
Off the top of my head, I can't say for certain, because like a lot of like what I've seen is like when I've watched some of the debates online, video. So
okay, let's leave that then. Let's leave. No problem. Look, I'm not going to put it. You can come back to me. So let's leave the ex-Muslim community for now. But in terms of related to my question, you are searching and looking. So, what are the things that you think are positive, and what are the things you consider to be negative, but you looking into and see whether they're actually indeed negative or not? So maybe you can clarify those things.
Okay, I think having a structure for like for living and worship, I think is a good thing.
Okay.
I think the fact that, for instance, certain aspects of like say law, for instance, let's say say like the stance on alcohol. I think, but mind you, I still drink, but I've cutting down. It's not something that I just switch off like that. Yeah,
it takes time.
Yeah, but I do see the damage that it does to a lot of people. Some people like totally lose control of themselves. So in general, I do see it as a good thing. Also, I feel that things like no interest policy, sort of like money lending, I think that's also a good thing. I think the fact that you believe that there is one God, I think that's a good thing in relation to, like, say, Christianity and the God the Father, Son, Holy Ghost, and which the Bible does seem to. That makes that a bit. It's not exactly clear cut. It's like there are verses in the Bible that do seem to suggest that there is just one God, but it has been distorted, and then like that message has been like pushed out sort of to wider public. So I do have issues in regards to the number of gods, basically. So those are some good things. There are some restrictive things in Islam which I would struggle with, really, because like I'm a man. Ultimately, I do crave female attention. So it's not. I'm not a guy who could just remain. What's the word? When you
celibate.
That's the word, yeah. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I would struggle with that like long term, and I've been looking through certain bits, certain surahs in the Quran because I do.
Islam recognizes that. I'm sure you know. Islam recognizes this, and in fact, it doesn't take away from this need of man within the biological makeup it's given, and it caters for that in this life, and it caters for it in the next life. In the next life too. If someone who is really interested in this kind of pleasure from intimacy, Islam caters for it in such a way that it fulfills their biological need, their spiritual need. So it both takes into the physical and the spiritual at the same time and uplifts you to give you that, the contentment and the pleasure and satisfaction that one needs, here and hereafter. That's why, that's in a purified manner, of course. That's why, even though it restricts relationship within marriage, because it wants to build a family. Family is one of the solid foundations of a unit for any structure of a society to function, and it gives you that sanctity, that responsibility, that just that kind of a framework in which you can actually fulfill your physical needs as well as have children, as well as have family, and then you can look into whole society and go on, continue your lineage, but in a marital contract in which responsibility is divided in both you and your partner. If there was no marriage, for example, then you can just say bye-bye, that's it, no more. But when there's a marriage, there's a responsibility. You have to, by way of contract, Islamically I'm talking about, looking after, taking care of, not only loving is not, you're not obliged to now love, you're not obliged to take care of them, take care of, maintain, support, nourish, and so on and so forth. So the responsibility and commitment comes in with marriage. So Islam does cater the physical needs, but it puts it in a framework and a boundary, and it recognizes some people may need to have more than one partner. And Islam tells you, if you can deal with them, again, in a responsibility framework, then 2, 3, or 4. So in God's divine wisdom, it's limited to 4. In the past, people had no limits. Islam came to restrict that with a limitation of 4. Okay? So, if you're really something like this, you can speak to Muslims who have 4 wives, for example, and you see whether they are really catered for or not, and you will see, depending on how much the libido that one has and so on and so forth, whether Islam does maintain one's, the cravings, you want to call it, or their desires having been satisfied. Okay, so there is a mechanism. Why restrict to 4 and not 3 and not 5 and not 20? This is the divine wisdom. Okay. Because there's a lot of responsibility going on. I mean, some people are struggling to have one family, children, in-laws, and so on and so forth, having huge issues with looking after and maintaining that, let alone 4 families to maintain. But people can, and the provision is there, but Islam restricted that. So when it comes to, these things, Islam doesn't simply just brush it aside, saying, no, become a celibate. Go live like an ascetic individual in the top of a mountain and that's it. No, because God knows how He created you. He knows your needs because God is the one who gave you those needs. But God also wants people to know one thing, that this need that I have to fulfill the purpose of my life, and this can be a test against me. Okay? Some people want to have wealth and fame, for example. I want to be famous. I want to have million subscribers. I want to have these followers. I want to have people saying, you are the king. This kind of thing, this could be a test whether this is really making people to really be a slave to their ego, or are they really going to be the slave to their creator. So just to give you a mundane example, Muslim men cannot wear gold or silk. A lot of people like gold, men like gold, but this is a test whether do you really want to submit to God and submit to His will, and see whether demonstrating that you submit. So He's just given you okay, silk and gold are for whom, not for you. See whether you really submit to His law. Some people struggle. Yeah? So this can be a test. So God can test us in various ways to see whether we are really someone who, having given the faculty of choice, are able to use it rather than abuse it. So when you look at lots of things, one of these things that you example, yeah, it can be a struggle for many people, okay? But there is a reason for it. And God says clearly, if you can remain yourself, if you haven't been married, become chaste, and there are mechanisms to ensure that. So suppress the desire by fasting, okay? Keep on fasting. So fasting will make sure that desire that you have is overburdening you, can keep in control. So there's a mechanism, like, you know, in fasting, we not only abstain from food or drink, otherwise our fast is not going to accept it. We abstain from vain talk, backbiting, insulting, mocking. So even these things that were like food we abstain from, which were permissible, but even something that is permissible, but we abstain from, sexual relationship during the daytime. It's a measure of, it's a way of having this training and development of oneself and see whether you can control yourself. Because if you can do that, just like some people having control with drinking alcohol, for example. During the fasting period, you can't drink. Well, liberal struggle, they can do it. People have problems with smoking, they can withstand these hours between sunrise to sunset and not smoke. Okay? People can do that. They've shown this resilience. They've shown that human beings, the level of tolerance is actually quite high. Okay? You don't know your potential. Islam wants to develop that human being with the understanding of their potential. It trains them every year by this month of Ramadan to elevate them in their character, in their desires, in their ego, and comes to, this is called internal jihad, if you didn't know. Struggle of your own self internally to make yourself to that better human being. Human being better in the sense that healthier, sounder in judgment, sounder in health, better in understanding and reflecting. So whatever you imagine to be virtuous in mind and body, Islam prepares you for that. So yes, there are struggles to have with, but this is for your own good. Don't people go to the gym and lift weight, and it's so painful often, but it eventually gives them a good outcome.
Even they said that there's no pain, no gain.
Yeah, gives them good outcome. So training often requires, sometimes you have to sacrifice with pain, a little bit of suffering, and so on. So that was one example. What other things else?
I think
do you
mentioned
think?
alcohol in the beginning.
Yeah. So alcohol, what God says in the Quran, they ask you about wine and gambling. يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر. They ask you about wine, alcohol, and gambling. God says, in them, there is sin and there is good. Good and there is sin. But the sin outweighs the benefit that it has. So Islam does not simply say, oh, there is no benefit in some alcohol. With alcohol, even though it's not something you drink, we have a lot of things that we mix it with. It's a good diluent, right? Alcohol, it can be a good diluent in many things. And there can be other benefits. But the benefits and the sin, when you compare the bad effects, outweighs it. That's why health-wise, the safest level of alcohol consumption, according to the consensus of almost more than 100 countries or so, right? 0%. No alcohol. So the one then should question is, why is that so? Because alcohol actually is something that befogs the mind. It's a chemical poison in a way. It does make you a little bit loose. I mean, when you drink, you have your guards taken off. You become free and you start talking to people and having fun and so on. That's what people feel easy to socialize. So alcohol has been in various societies and a tool for socialization with other people, to know about each other, to hang around with each other, to have that bond and connection, because it puts their guard off, because that judgment is there. You just talk whatever you want to do and so on and so forth. This is what it does. It really impairs your sound judgment. So you're no longer critical at that point and so on and so forth. You're no longer thinking rationally. You can just, whatever comes to your heart and so on, you will talk and you will do that thing. And that's why under the influence of alcohol, people go in and they might be sleeping with their mothers or their daughters or their sisters and so on and so forth, because they haven't got a clue what's happening in their mind. So Islam prevents and prohibits things which are not good for us, okay? And it recognizes that alcohol is not good for you and for the society, ultimately. So it prevents that harm to come to that society by preventing it, okay? So Islam is for prevention rather than dealing with it and trying to find the cure. If you can prevent it, it's better than trying to find the cure when the problem happens, okay? Gambling, look how many people by gambling, I got £1 million now, I can go to holiday, I can pay my... But look what it done to other people. Some other people just gamble away all of their things. And now societies are trying to restrict, saying, okay, gamble sensibly, okay? Have an alarm saying, this is the limit. Don't gamble too much and so on and so forth. But people still can't do that because they don't know when to access, because it's an addiction. Alcoholism, likewise, gambling is an addiction, and people have problems to get rid of this problem of addiction, and it takes long rehabilitation. So Islam says, yes, people can, with this money that is collected by gambling, it can be given to charity, as they do, for example. So there may be some benefit in this process, but Islam looks at it overall and saying, look, holistically for the society, it's actually not a good thing. The harm outweighs the benefit. Harm outweighs the benefit, so no. So this is the principle of Islam. Islam simply doesn't say, oh, no, not for that reason. It recognizes there can be some benefit in it. So alcohol, gambling, fornication, which is marital relationship outside marriage, what it does is it destabilizes the society. You just go and sleep with whoever else and so on and so forth. And then you get unwanted child, and then you say, let's abort it. And the girl says, no, I want it. And then she says, no, I want you to look after it. And no, I didn't want it. Many young parents we know of, they come in saying, okay, the partner's left, and she's now trying to bring up that child, because women are different than men in various ways. So when they're pregnant, their internal biology tells them they don't want that to be aborted. They might be some way compelled by various elements of the society saying, oh, you can abort it, it's okay, but lots of women don't want to. And now they want to have this child coming up with one parent themselves. It's a lot of struggle and difficulty. The child that is now born and brings up himself in a one-parent family, psychologically is impacted already. How much torture they're going through, you and I would not know unless you are in their shoes. So it does really have a devastating effect on the society, the individuals that come out from this problem interactions. So Islam recognizes all of that, saying, look, it wants to give a society which is thriving in prosperity, in harmony, in understanding, and in love, and all of these things. How does it ensure that? By giving you mechanisms to ensure. So it's called, what it's called is hudud, boundaries. Islam says, yeah, these are the things that are prohibited for you, but you can have anything else. Oh, you cannot drink alcohol, but you can drink orange juice, banana juice, apple juice, carrot juice, tomato juice, you name it. I can just keep on going on. There's no restriction. But only few things Islam restricts for their own benefit. Usury is another one I mentioned. Look at how the world is enslaved. Whether you want to talk about Rwanda, whether you talk about the third world countries, talk about the worlds are enslaved by usury interest. Islam, what Islam says, God and His Messenger has declared a war against riba, declared a war. This is how serious it is taken. And Islam doesn't want people to be enslaved in that, because if you think about it, now I'm going to give you some rational understanding of that. What is usury interest? Imagine now, I have a house, my top roof is broken, right? I want to repair it, but I have no money. You're my friends. I go to you. Now, if you're my friend, and I say, just give me £1,000, I'll give it to you 3 months later. Okay? You say, yeah, no problem. That's it, give it. Now imagine I go to another friend, he says, oh yeah, I'll give you money, but you have to give me 25% on top of it. 1,200 3 months later. You know what this friend is doing? He is exploiting my vulnerability and my weakness at that point, because I am desperate. I need it. He recognizes my weakness and vulnerability, and he says, now you know what? Let's make some money. Okay, give me that. So this is a vulture. Okay, someone who's greedy, someone who's not a compassionate person. Okay, so the whole system is set up like that with banks. They were set up by people. Initially, it was people with this kind of greed and exploitation mentality to exploit their weaknesses and vulnerability to other people. Islam says no. Someone is in need. If you have the means, capacity, help them out, make a contract, and they will pay you back. There's no way saying, oh, deny that, oh, no, you didn't give me money. Lending, borrowing, Islam says, even if it's small, write it down and bring witnesses. So you don't regret it later. But do not take and give interest. So now we realize Islam provides a solution and it maintains the empathy. It doesn't become, between you and me, something like an exploitation. You are going to exploit my weakness at that point. You are still going to show me to me the friendship that you have, rather than not. Okay? So the whole world, if you think about it, the banking system is really exploiting the people who are weak and so on. But it is.
It's a system placed for exploitation. So
Exploit.
those who are finding. It is a system that is placed to help those who are greedy and ready to exploit the people.
Yeah.
So it is making their way of exploitation easier.
Making rich richer, poor poor. But Islam goes with the counter way. We have an opposite concept, which is taking money from the rich and giving it to the poor to balance out the society.
Yeah, talk about the zakah is
Zakat.
contextual now.
So with zakat, if you look at the zakat in light of the charity, if you talk about comparatively with the interest system, what is the interest system? Interest system is to make the rich one richer and the poor more poorer. A poor person always need a loan. So if you go to a payday loan shop, they will give you, like just Brother Mansur said, £5,000 and they will charge you 50% interest. By the time you pay three installment, you will see another 4 installment carried on your shoulder. So that means you cannot come out of it. So they're going to suck your blood by this institutional process. They signed you in.
It's giving the opportunity
Exactly.
to bloodsuckers.
Bloodsuckers. So what Islam said, no, this is unfair. And Allah legislated, Allah said, you know, when Allah given wealth to the rich people, He given a portion to the rich people to test rich people. So whether they can give it out from their pocket. So and Allah gives this zakat, which means taking from the rich and giving it to the poor people. So what will happen? Now the harmony will be established within the society, because the poor people will know that the rich are contributing. At the same time, there will be less gaps in economically, financially, and the harmony will be more established. So the whole Islamic system is fighting against to the traditional banking system that are exploiting the weakness. And that's why you see why there are so many poor people in the world. Because of this system that makes people poor, more poorer, and the rich more richer. But Islam says, no.
Working hard.
You can't
is
play
not
these
getting
games.
the right proportion of their
You can't play these games.
results.
Yes. You can't play this game. And then Allah laid out which are the category of the people should receive this zakat money.
So it's basically, if you're rich, you are under obligation by God to provide a certain amount of money, which is 2.5%
yeah.
of your surplus wealth every year, to a number of categories of people, and they are.
Let me read out. This is in
So that should.
in 960, I think.
Yeah.
Let me read out.
So basically, ensuring that the people who are poor, they're taken care of, looked after, and they don't totally remain poor.
Let me give it to you here. This here.
Zakah expenditures, this system of zakah charity, are only for the poor and for the needy and for those employed for it, and for bringing hearts together, and for freeing captives, and for those in debt, and for the cause of Allah, and for the stranded traveler. An obligation imposed by Allah, and Allah is knowing and wise. So making sure these categories of people who are the needy, they get it. Just imagine. In fact, that's difficult to imagine now because this system is not implemented. But I can assure you, at one point during the Khalifa Umar bin Abdul Aziz, if I remember the history correctly, he was trying to look for someone to give zakat to, a poor person to give zakat to. and he was struggling to find something. Because the system, Islamic systems of economics, Islamic systems of how to build a society, how to govern a society, how to implement crime and punishment, the economic system, the education system, all went in hand in such a way that the money wasn't staying on someone's own hand and the wealth and the health remained in someone's hand. No, distributed. So he could not find easily someone to give this zakat to, because you have to be eligible for zakat. Like you have to be poor enough in these conditions, eligible enough to receive it. They were well off. Why? Because the system was working. We, unfortunately, and when I say unfortunately, it's not about fortune or luck, we don't believe in that. I'm saying sadly, rather, we are in a state today where Islam is not shown to the people, so they can't see it. We can't show you Islam. If we were to show you Islam, you would say, yes, this is what happened 300 years before. Muslim merchants, traders, they went and traveled around the world to do business and to spread Islam. Okay? People went to Malaysia, for example. Malaysia, Indonesia. There was no Muslim army that went there. People saw Islam in their actions of the Muslims. They were traders, and they could see the traders' honesty.
Yes.
Tafadhal, stay here. I'm sure they'll learn from you, inshallah.
Yeah.
So, when they went, people saw their actions, their life in action, their belief in action, their concept, right of wrong, whatever that is, manifested in actions. So they said, look, this man or this woman who is this truthful, honest, sincere, compassionate, helpful, just, fair, all that you can think of embodied in these individuals, not one, many. How so? So when they asked them and learnt about it, they said, we are Muslims. We worship Allah, we give the right of God to God and right of people to people, right of creation to creation. And this is why God created us, to serve Allah, look after the creation. So they said, yeah, that seems reasonable. Your concept of God makes sense. Your concept of afterlife makes sense. Concept of justice makes sense. Your concept of my being here, purpose of life makes sense. How do I become a Muslim? They said, it's simple. You only need to believe in your heart, testify with your tongue, and practice it with your limbs. That there is no God worthy of worship except one and only God. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the final messenger sent by God, so that you can submit to the will of God through them. Because the will of God is expressed through the messengers. The will of God is not floating around somewhere. When you submit to the will of God, you need to know where the will of God is, what the will of God is. The prophets and messengers are told what the will of God is. So they are the ones conveying, this is what God wants from you. Be just, be truthful, be honest, be fair. And all of the virtues. And avoid, don't be a lazy person. Don't be an oppressor. Don't be a rapist. Don't be a genocidal maniac. Don't be, and it continues like that. So there are these virtues and there are these evils. Islam says, no, this is how you're going to elevate yourself. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ. Do you mind explaining to our friend what it means?
To fulfill the good manners and good morality. And here, that's, by the way, that shows fulfillment of the manners, meaning that basically many people, they may appear to you well-mannered, well-behaved, but not because they are doing this for the sake of God, but they are doing it for any matters. Could be for to be praised, to be known with that, or to gain things of this worldly matter. But we are not doing it for anything of that. We are doing it for the sake of God, because God is the one who sees our secrets and what's in our heart. And if we are sincere, when we are generous, if we are sincere, when we are truthful, if we are sincere, when we are trustworthy, all of these things, it has to come from sincerity to God before it's manifest as actions on earth.
Does that make sense that this is indeed a system of life worth living?
Yeah, it's appealing. It is appealing, but but still I have my reservations
Sure.
in the sense that a person shouldn't make snap decisions here on something so important. So it's not really my way.
So how about exploring some of the things that you are considering to be something that you need to clarification of for? Like there is things in Islam that you've heard or seen or observed that you think, look, if Islam was true, why is that? It doesn't make sense to me yet. So maybe you can just talk about some of these things, and ourselves, as we can try, and our sheikh here can help you to understand and clarify those things. Because once we can get this clarified, then you will see the reasons or obstacles for not becoming a Muslim becomes less and less and less, eventually to a point where saying, I have no reason but to accept Islam, to submit and surrender my will and show that commitment to the Creator.
Fulfill your purpose.
To fulfill the purpose, because that will be what you are supposed to do in the first place. But you are on a journey to make sure and ensure this is the case, and then show that commitment. So what would be those things?
Well, I would need to know more, wouldn't I?
Also, adding to this, I just wanted to add to this. There is the concept of the truth. All of us we are truth seekers, correct? Why we are truth seekers? All of us, we're in our journey for seeking the truth. But there is something in our mind, which is planted in our mind, the truth to be followed. Yeah, you agree with this? Meaning, if there's something true, it has to be followed. I cannot say to you, for example, if there is an exam or something like this, they say this is the true answer, this is the false answer. You will not say, you know what, let me check the false one and that this is. I'm saying to you, this is the truth. If it demonstrates that this is the truth to be followed. So what we are saying as Muslims, we claim Islam is the truth. Now here, if we prove to you that Islam is actually the truth, which is the truth from God, then there is nothing on us except to surrender to the truth. Am I right in saying this?
Well, what you're saying, I mean, I wouldn't argue with it, but I don't think you could prove to me that it's the truth today. I mean, that would take time, as far as I'm concerned. Of course, it would take time because I would need to know more. I wouldn't claim to go and learn a subject in a few minutes. It's not practical. Whatever I'm getting into, I need to sort of look into it properly, thoroughly. I'm not, because I can't just if I leave from here, I'm walking down the road, I bump into a Jehovah's Witness, and they come hard at me and they say, oh, this is blah blah blah, this blah blah blah, this is the truth. Well then, if I just accept, yes, okay, it sounds nice, and I accept it, then I'm a Jehovah's Witness, and the next thing I could be a Hare Krishna. So
you need to assess and verify.
Of course you need to evaluate.
Assess,
what you
evaluate,
and
verify, and then accept.
Yeah, and me personally, that would take time. I can't be rushed.
No,
it doesn't make sense.
That's not an issue at all.
Okay, could I just say that's one of the reasons maybe why some people in this park even today say that they're ex-Muslims, and I don't know all their reasons.
You should ask.
But I can only.
And then we can talk.
They're normally well into some argument. I just stand and listen.
What you can do, you can ask them and inquire them, and we can talk about it as we said, and we can demonstrate to you that this way. I mean, I can tell you right now. I mean, this is something that I can say with a bold face, that it was never intellectual reasons, nothing to do with truth claims. It was an emotional reasons.
Mostly, yeah.
Emotional reasons mostly. So emotion can be packaged and baggaged in various ways, and by examining their conversion from or reversion from or deconversion, whatever you want to call it, this element is present. All we need to do is demonstrate that it's not intellectual, it's not about a truth claim.
Yep.
Like Islam was not found to be truth, that's why I left it. No, it's because of some emotions. Like, one of the things I can share with you, oh, your prophet married someone so young, that's why I left Islam.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Have you heard? But let me tell you.
No, I've heard that, but to me, it's not so much an issue.
Exactly.
Because at the time, maybe it was acceptable at the time, and if it was wrong, and if there's a judgment day, it will judge accordingly. So me as a person, I live in these times, so I have to kind of focus on these times.
That's right.
So it isn't something that I would say is its proudest moments, but at the end of the day, it is what it is.
So I wasn't going to justify to you, the Islamic position on that. What I am illustrating is the point that people often make an assertion, a claim that that was the reason, but actually deep inside they know it wasn't that. They're trying to find reasons retrospectively to justify
Their emotional position.
I couldn't accept that as a reason for somebody leaving when they accepted Islam, they were aware of that and they accepted it. It doesn't make sense.
So that's why I'm saying you will find things like this retrospective justification. This is called retrospective justification. Later on, imagine someone left. Let's talk about someone became a vegetarian, and now you want to say what reason? They're trying to find out. I became a vegetarian because my girlfriend was a vegetarian, so I had to be a vegetarian. But he can't say that to people, right? So he's trying to find out ways and excuses like, oh, I'm a vegetarian because it's so harsh that you kill animals. So they start justifying. But the real reason was he had a girlfriend who was vegetarian. So this is what we call retrospective. Later on, fitting the reason why they left that particular way of life or system of life. Okay? So,
by the way, today I had an interesting guy who claimed to be born in a Muslim family, but he's a Christian. That's what he was saying.
yeah.
And the interesting thing about him, as you mentioned, that totally non-intellectual reasons. And he said, yeah, I studied. Sometimes I studied the Bible and understood. Then after that, I said to him, okay, based on this. So I brought him some certain contradictions, which Bible that you follow, etc. And then he said, you know what? I believe this is the truth. I said, listen, I told him about a story about two people in a desert. They were hungry, and then they saw from distance. One of them, they saw something, and then one of them, he said, it's a goat. And the other one, he said, no, it's a bird. It's not a goat, it's a bird. He said, no, it's a goat, look at it. And then he said, no, it's a bird. So they went further. He said, look. The guy who claimed, he said, look, it has feathers. It's impossible to be a goat. It's feathers. He said, no, even some goats, they have feathers. They were saying. So they went further. And then they saw, as soon as they get close, then the birds start flying. He said, look, now it has wings. It starts flying. Look at it. He said, even some goats, they fly. Meaning, some people, it's not about you convince them with the truth. They can't see the truth with their eyes, but they try to deceive themselves and to give themselves that this is the truth because I believe it's the truth. So that's why, and I said to him, based on what you said, and he said, no, I have nothing, I don't know, I'm just convinced because I believe. That's all. So his only conviction was because he believed, not because based on research or studies or anything like that. So that's why when we said to you, we claim actually Islam is the truth. But us here, even people who try to, preach Islam, try to approach people to deliver the message of Islam to them, what we do, we assist actually all the other faiths. We went through it. Yeah, we went through all other faiths, and then we'll see all these contradictions and all of these wrong things. How come if it's the word of God, if it's something came from God, then it has to be the truth. As you mentioned, it has to be the truth. So if there are certain things which contains falsehood, that means there's opposite the truth. So that's how it is. So when we deal with it based on a knowledge, based on a deep search, and based on understanding, not based on because we are blind follower, because we believe this, that's why we are Muslims. No, actually, we assess, we study, we understand, and then after that, based on this, we get to the conclusion that Islam is the true faith, and all other faiths are false based on this. Does that make sense?
Starting with the concept of God, yes. So, just think about how the Quran approaches this. أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا. In the Quran, God is saying, do they not contemplate and reflect deeply? If there were other gods, no. If the Quran, sorry, this is another. If the Quran was from other than God, surely they would find many contradictions and discrepancies. Yeah. Some people claim Quran has contradictions. The Quran says there's no contradictions. So according to the Quran, if people have deeply reflected, deeply, not superficial reading, deep research and reflection, and they found a contradiction, according to the standard of the Quran cannot be from God. Do you get it? That's what the Quran gives the falsification test. So Quran is very clear on this. It gives us falsification test, which is what we use in science. If you ask a scientist, are you in science yourself?
I'm interested in science.
Good.
Science is everything.
Scientists, we apply for falsification tests, right? For example, we'll give a theory and say this is what we've done, our experiments and so on. You can prove us wrong by saying if you cannot replicate it, for example. It's easy. Quran says simply, if this book is not from God, then surely you'll find a contradiction. Meaning what? Go and find a contradiction in the Quran. We've been saying this in the Spark, offline, online, everywhere, and see. Yeah. So if somebody has found a contradiction, then Quran, according to its very standard, cannot be from God. We're still waiting to see. So what we find rather, people with no knowledge of the Quran, what it's saying, no knowledge of the subject matter, and they're saying, I've got a contradiction. Let me give an example. Not assessing it well, but illustrate a point. One gentleman a few weeks ago said, the Quran talks about the birth or beginning of a human being. What happens is it's actually coming from the ribs and the backbones.
I saw you debating
ribs. So when I was trying to understand, okay, what do you know about science and what does the Quran actually say? It became apparent that he knew neither. Not about science, not about what the Quran is saying. That's why the Quran is saying, no, only when you do tadabbur, deep reflection and contemplation, you would not find anything, any mistakes, any errors and so on. So Quran offers, but one of the most powerful challenge the Quran throws to people is something that is fascinating. It challenges the whole of humankind, not just one group of people, whole of humankind. And says, even the whole humankind would come together, including the spirits, the jinns. They would not be able to make something like the Quran. And the Quran says, make the whole book like it, 10 chapters like it, or one surah, one chapter like it. People don't even understand the nature of this challenge. They're saying, there you go, Psalms 23 in English. Look how beautiful it is, better than the Quran. They haven't even got a clue what the challenge of the Quran is. If I say bring a microphone like this and bring something like that, is it like it? It's not. Look at the shape and look at the shape.
So your umbrella.
Right. So the Quran tells people to really go and attempt to falsify it. If you cannot falsify it, the Quran tells you. But if you cannot do it, and it tells you in a parenthetical remark, you can never do it because it's from God, right? Then fear the fire whose fuel is man and stones, prepared for those people who are arrogant rejectors. But give glad tidings to those who believe and do righteous deeds. For them there are gardens with rivers underneath following, and so on and so forth. So Quran tells you, puts you in a balance and saying, look, if you really are doubtful, and the Quran, I want to share this something very interesting. The Arabic language is so beautiful because God chose to deliver His message in that language, that even the word doubt, right, the way it's expressed, is actually a baseless doubt. You have no basis. Some doubts can be based on something, like, okay, there is some reason to doubt. But here, you can't justify that doubt. Yeah? So, the Quran says, even if you think like that, you have a doubt which has no basis. Yeah? This is how you can falsify it. But if you cannot do it, well, this is the consequence out for you if you are someone rejecting with your arrogance. Because the Quran claims to be a revelation from God and you are rejecting it. So if you reject something knowing that this is indeed the truth, because if it was from a human being, from another community, from someone else, you should be able to match it. The fact that you cannot match it, and you've been constantly failing from day one to now 1446 years and counting, and you still cannot. Obviously now it's going to be more difficult for people to do it. Why? Because they're removed from the time where they were speaking this language of eloquence. Now people have their level of understanding and being excelled to that language is much lower than before. So it's going to be much more difficult task for people compared to when people were experts at that time. Because Quran, the way it challenged them not to the lay people. Oh, go on, debate me. No, like what the Christians trying to say, oh, you Muslims trying to go and debate the ignorant lay people, but you leave the knowledgeable one. The Quran saying no. To the knowledgeable people, you masters of Arabic language, do it. Just like in the time of Moses, the Prophet, peace be upon him. When he was dealing with the experts, the professionals, saying, okay, you consider what I bring is magic, bring your magicians. Okay, we'll have a display of reality, contests. So when the magicians came, it wasn't lay people. So the proof was being demonstrated against the experts, the professionals, the ones who would understand the evidence, not the lay people. Okay, so when the magicians threw their magic, it was really eye-catching magic, and whoa! But when Prophet Moses, so peace be upon him, threw his wooden staff, and it became a snake, and it destroyed all of the illusions, who knew that this was not magic? The magicians. Because they knew their limit of their tricks and said, this is not magic. And they said, we submit to the God of Moses. So this is what Islam wants, people. If you really are doubtful, Quran says, if you cannot do it, then go and seek helpers and supporters besides God, if your doubt is true. There is a remark in there, in that sentence. If you cannot do it, then go and seek your support from others besides God. Do you want to bring this verse up? I want to show this, at least so you know what I'm talking about. It's black and white to the point where there's no ambiguity about the nature. About ayah 23 in Baqarah.
Listen, there is something you mentioned. When Allah says in the Quran, وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا. If it came from other than Allah, they will find a lot of ikhtilaf.
Even
that means dispute, ambiguity, things like that. That word ikhtilaf, that word in Arabic, it's a unique word in the Quran, in the whole Quran. Some people, and the Quran was revealed over 23 years. 23 years. Meaning a person, if someone wanted to author something, will repeat himself here and there, will say words here and there, etc. Here, this verse was revealed before the end of the Quran, before the last revelation of the Quran. Some people tend to be clever, to use, you know what, we may not find dispute in the Quran things, but let's use the terminology, ikhtilaf, that's word. Let's find in the Quran, and if we find another word, we'll say there are two words in the Quran, it says ikhtilaf. Two words in the Quran, it says the same word, which is dispute. And then this covered in the Quran, the whole Quran, that word is only mentioned once in the Quran.
Let me just clarify how significant this is. The way the Quran, that challenge is structured, if this was not from God, then you'd find many ikhtilafan. The word is ikhtilafan, okay, in this form. If it wasn't from God, you'd find many ikhtilafan. Many means more than one, right? Okay. So someone could have just simply said, okay, all I need to do is, I don't need to go the meaning of the word, which is a contradiction, an error, a discrepancy. I will just see if there's another word called ikhtilafan. The Quran says, if it wasn't from God, you'd find many. The whole of the Quran, with all these words and verses, this form of the word is only once in the Quran. So even that excuse is removed. So this is what God says. And if you are in doubt about what we have sent down, this Quran, upon our servant, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, then produce a surah, a chapter, the like thereof, and call upon your witnesses, your supporters, other than Allah, God, if you are truthful. But if you do not do it, and you will never be able to, then fear the fire whose fuel is people and stones, prepare for the disbelievers. Yeah? And this is an introduction. It's a very interesting, it's not a translation word for word. Okay, it's okay. And the next continues, and give glad tidings to those. Okay, Washri Ladina. Amen. So, if people do really look into the falsification test, and they cannot falsify it, then the Quran is saying, then how do you then explain this? It claims to be from Quran, from God in His knowledge, and you cannot in any way explain it otherwise. Because if it was from human being, you should be able to match it. You should be able to find contradictions in it, errors in it, errors of science, errors of history, and so on and so forth. But if you are failing to do that, then what are you going to be your response to this falsification test? You haven't falsified the Quran. Quran makes it from God. You're going to live a life of uncertainty. You'll never be content in your life because you know there's an element already telling you, coming up in black and white writing, this is the truth, this is the truth, this is the truth. Then where are you going? Where are you going? Yeah? You know how the Quran addresses, like, have the unbelievers not known and seen the heavens and the earth was joined together as one piece, and God brought it up asunder, parted it asunder, and He brought everything from water. He ends by saying, would they then not believe? Addressing people's query, concern, questions, giving evidence in between, and then saying, would you not then not believe? Would you not believe? What are you expecting? What are you waiting for? What more do you need? The evidence is there. So that's why the Quran says, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. God says, we will soon show them our evidence, our ayat, our signs in the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that this is the truth. So this is the approach of the Quran. So if you read and study, by all means investigate, go to level. I mean, if you really feel that I need to learn Arabic, go and spend 6 months or something like that, spend the Arabic, say what the Arabic has to say. Now you have lots of tools where it tells you the Arabic words and the meaning from authoritative dictionaries for those who don't. Yeah. So you can go to that level and say, okay, this is what the text says. Why is it then I'm still having an uncertainty? Because what I need, what you need, is a certainty that this is from God. So Quran offers falsification test, it offers positive proof. Proof within yourself tells you, like, it speaks to you that you know that no one else knows about except you. This is how the Quran addresses people. Quran talks about things that people could not have known at all, in any way, means, because knowledge was not known. So where do you account for this information to have come from then? I mean, the underoceanic sea currents can only be observed, like if you are up there with a satellite imagery, you can see this. Or go deep down and you experience it. With a human, without a submarine or the gear of diving equipment, you won't be able to see those deep interoceanic waves. Bahr, Lujji. The Quran talks about these are very deep oceans, not just shallow seas. And this is where we now know this is the case. Interoceanic currents. Just like you have surface waves on the surface of the ocean.
Ocean above an ocean. There is underneath the ocean, there are some certain types with different, salt with different, temperature. It's literally an ocean under an ocean. All these things, when you say you ponder, who taught someone who was a literate man? Lived in the Arab Peninsula.
Let's give an example. Let's give an example. Let's give an example. Imagine we're there in that time period, right? And then I just told you, look, you see the superpowers of the day? Persia, Byzantium. Yeah? The Romans and the Persians. Two superpowers. The Quran says, the Romans have been defeated. Just imagine the Prophet came along and said, the Quran actually says that. The Romans have been defeated, but they should be victorious again within
few
years time. Okay? Say 3 to 9 years or 3 to 7 years time. And the believers will then rejoice. Now, when you have two superpowers, how can you confidently say that the superpower that lost, only within a few years they'll be victorious again? Russia and America. What happened to Russia and America? Russia got split. It's still split. Soviet Union, USSR, that's it. Can anyone have predicted, like, USSR will join together again and you'll be superpower and they'll defeat America? It will be very difficult. But this is what an individual who said, I have been appointed by God as a prophet, he's making that statement which there's no need for it. Why is he staking his prophethood on something that is no relevance and need for it? Like say, something in the future, what if it didn't happen? He will be an imposter, a fake prophet. People will say, look, you prophesied, it didn't come true. Look, 10 years have gone and it didn't happen.
And actually they use bid'a sinin, bid'a, like in Arabic, between 3 and 9, meaning not less than 3 years, not more than 9 years. That's the time. We're talking about a time that said, and it precisely was within 7 years this happened. How come?
Are there any prophecies that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has made that hasn't come true yet?
There are prophecies he made of the eschatological prophecies, what we call the end of times. Obviously, these prophecies will only materialize towards the end. So we can't use them as an evidence that he prophesied came true, because this hasn't come, because this is yet to come. But we don't use them to say, oh look, he prophesied, because these are the near end time prophecies. But things he said about things where you can test and so on within a certain lifetime, that demonstrates indeed how did he know that. So for example, he prophesies from the knowledge of the Quran from God and so on, there will be a beast coming out of the earth, speaking, dabbat min al-ard. We can't show that to you yet because it's a prophecy of the end times.
But there are things that as well happen. Like for example, the Prophet peace be upon him told us we're going to be fighting. He said we're going to be fighting the Jews. Where they're going to be on the west side of the river, and you're going to be on the east side of the river. And he said this. Now at that time, we're talking about the Muslims. They were vulnerable in the Arab Peninsula. They didn't even go outside, and they know there is no any river within the Arab Peninsula. At that time, within the Arab Peninsula, there is no river there. So, and he is saying that there will be a river. So, and then the Muslims, there will be Muslims. He didn't say the Arabs, he said the Muslims. They're going to be on the east side of the river. And then the Jews will be on the west side of the river. Does that make what comes to your mind now? East Bank and West Bank. Now we're talking about as if these things is happening. So the point is, he said to us certain things. He told us 1400 years ago. He said that there will be no house made of bricks or wood or even wool except Islam will penetrate there. Islam will reach there. Do we live that time? Nowadays, can we say now Islam literally entered every single house on earth?
By the tools that you see just in front of you, Islam can reach every single house. But look at how it's amazing. Imagine now somewhere in an Amazonian jungle now today, a small tribe living. They haven't got any clothes, anything like that. And they said, someone prophesied, you will be the superpowers of the day at that time, or you know what, you will compete against each other, making the tallest skyscrapers on earth. To materialize, I mean, you can't even fathom. These people don't even have any technology. They don't have phones, they don't have electricity, nothing. And now you're saying they're building the tallest skyscrapers and competing with each other? That's something how is strange to imagine when and how this is going to be. The Prophet Muhammad actually said something like that. What did he say? This is worth exploring.
And he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, he said there will be a time that he said just before the hour, and one of the things he said, and then he said that even the Arabs, he said even specifically the Arabs, they will compete with each other with lofty buildings, with tallest buildings. Nowadays, we are living in a time
barefooted Arabs, no shoes,
barefoot. The herdsmen of the camels. He said this, even the herdsmen of the sheep. Those herdsmen of the sheep, those ones barefooted. Even they didn't have, in a few years ago, they didn't have even enough clothes, and yet they will be competing with each other with lofty buildings. We're talking about nowadays. Now we live in a time that 50 or 60 years ago, how was Emirates? How was Saudi Arabia? How was Kuwait?
Sand.
Literally sand, and people literally herdsmen of camels and sheep. Now within these years, look now, they compete with each other with lofty buildings.
Tallest buildings in the world.
And he's talking about this. Now they are talking about another thing. And even in Saudi Arabia, they're going to build another building. It's like this. Who taught him about these things are going to happen? I mean, that's why we said to you earlier, if there is any of his statement is false, then that's it. But he is saying everything, whatever he said to us, we know some of the things that happened in our time, and we saw it even before our time or in our time, and some of it is going to happen yet, maybe in the future. But everything that he said demonstrated to be the truth. So that's why we say to you, if we present to you Islam is the truth, There is nothing except to follow the truth. That's what we are calling you, to the truth. We're not calling you to worship Muhammad or to worship me, to worship no. We're calling you to worship the Creator of the heavens and the earth, to submit your will to His will. The one who created you for a purpose is to worship Him. And of course, the way of worship has to be following guidance of the prophets and messengers, even not just only Muhammad, peace be upon him, all of them since the time of Noah all the way until the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. That's what we are calling you for. We're calling you to that, Islam. That's the meaning of Islam. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So let's hear some of the other obstacles or concerns that you may have. We can clarify those too.
Okay. Let's just rewind a bit. I never said to you that I have obstacles. I said that I'm looking into it.
My words. Sorry, apologies. My words.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is something that
we might be.
No, you didn't say that. Absolutely, you didn't say that. Things that you want to explore further, to be sure of. That
Well, I'm
if
exploring
that is
the Quran further. That's
Yeah.
what I mean. I read
Okay.
the Quran on my laptop.
Remember we talked about positive and negatives. If there's any negatives that becomes like, I need to look into further. So these are the things I'm alluding to. There's always a negative perception about things, right? People have a negative perception, either through stereotyping or by genuine concerns, or with no reason people just have a negative.
Well, the negative is I'm still uninformed. Yeah, because if I'm going to make an important decision, it has to be an informed decision.
Correct.
It can't just be, oh yes, follow this. Listen, Michael, follow this. Follow this. Follow
One day
this.
you're a Muslim, next day you're a Hare Krishna, and the next day you're a Buddhist. Yeah.
That's why we advise you to read. And Islam is an open book.
I know. I'm also going to look a bit further into the Bible as well and contrast and compare the two. You know, because I wouldn't. If you're rewind back to what you were saying, a person's seeking the truth here. You don't just decide. Supposing there's a library and the library holds all books of the truth, holds all the truth.
All books
yeah?
which they claim to be the truth.
Well, yeah. Well, let's just say, okay. Let's just say the library has all books and they all claim to be the truth. It wouldn't be sensible to go in there and just say, I'm going to take this book and then take this book, read this. Now,
Fair
the
enough.
truth. It is really sensible.
But you know where we are.
Yeah.
You know where to find us.
Yeah.
If you have questions, clarifications needed,
I will come back with
you're more than
questions.
welcome.
I certainly will come back with
And
questions.
we're here.
yeah.
So this is Michael, really a gentleman. Inshallah, God willing, we'll have more conversations with you. And if we are in any way a part of your journey to the truth, then it's our pleasure.
Let us include us in one thing. The other thing, since you are, you are looking for the truth, when you go home tonight, take a shower and sit down and say, oh God, I know you're there, I know you hear me, I know you see me, guide me with sincerity from your heart.
Seek guidance from
Basically,
God.
that's what we do as Muslims. You know how many times we say this? Minimum 17 times a day. Minimum. Every single Muslim on earth. Minimum.
In our prayers.
Every single day.
In our prayers.
Every day.
Regular prayer?
17 times a day.
As we pray 5 times a day.
That's if every single one does. I don't
No.
No. Every single
Meant
Muslim
to, right?
who prays 5 times a day. Yeah? When we say every single Muslim who prays the 5 times a day, in each prayer we recite the first chapter of the Quran. The first chapter of the Quran, it's about seeking guidance from God. So that's why you start with basically praising God, and then introducing or presenting yourself as a servant of God. Then you are humbling yourself to God and asking God to guide you. That's why if you read the first chapter of the Quran, say, guide us to the straight path. Which path? The path of those whom you have favored, not the path of those who gain Allah's anger, nor the path who went astray. We keep asking God again and again. So that's why we as Muslims, every single Muslim on earth who prays 5 times a day, that they will seek guidance from God at least 17 times a day. They are sincere. So that's what we are saying to you. At least tonight when you go home, ask God the guidance. Say, God, I know you're there. I know you hear me. I know you see me. But sincere, guide me to the right path. God, guide me. I need guidance. And if God knows that you are sincere in your heart and you are looking for the truth, God will show you the truth.
I am sincere in my heart, and that's why I don't say to you, yes, I'll do this, because I'm a man of my word. I don't take people who come and give me this, and then next minute it's a load of rubbish. I'm not into that.
You know, that's
I'm not
and that's
playing.
something which is respectful. And the Prophet peace be upon him admired a man like you, a man that there are 3 people came to embrace Islam in front of the Prophet peace be upon him. 2 of them hasted to go to embrace Islam. One of them he stayed behind. He took a shower. He put a new garment. He came in. He was delayed, and then the Prophet peace be upon him praised him. He said, "You have 2 characteristics. Allah and His Messenger loves them. Al-hilm wal ana, perseverance and be patient, taking it easy and kind. You know, in deciding things, not to rush into things. So that's something, no problem. But don't delay too much. I mean, sometimes in delaying things too much, then it will be opposite to the right thing. But in the same time, we say to you, take your time, think about it, ponder, read, understand, contemplate on the Quran, and then we are here. If you have any question, we are here to answer your question. Okay?
No problem.
All right, my brother.
Okay.
Nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you too.
May Allah, the one true God, to guide you to the right path. Amen. All right. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Look after yourself.
Goodwill to all you guys too.
All right. Thank you. Alhamdulillah, it was interesting discussion with the brother. May Allah bless him and may Allah, you know.
A real
guide him
gentleman,
through it.
a real gentleman.
Yeah, and actually, I enjoyed it. Allah, subhanAllah, some people that you enjoy
My one
actually.
is
You will enjoy it.
diesel.
Yeah. Some people you can tell us.